If you've been paying any attention to the national USA real estate market, there's been a lot of doom and gloom and a lot of fear going out there about owning a home. As a real estate agent for the last 16 years, nearly 17 years, I'm telling you this is nothing new. There's always been negative news about owning a home. And oftentimes, if you're feeding off negativity and bad emotions, you make really poor decisions. At least I do. In the news, I often will hear people say, it's a great idea to own a home. I hear a lot of people say it's a terrible time to own a home. And I think it's important to really figure out what is best for you and your family when you decide if you're going to be owning a house or not. I know that it's easy to really feed into fear. Right now, all the rage in 2026 is to have a defeatist attitude, that the whole world's against you, everything sucks. There's a big movement right now, I'm 40 years old, to really hate on your parents and boomers. There's been a lot of new articles coming out that the boomers are the most selfish generation ever. The boomers had the easiest life ever. And I just take a step back and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Why is that generation the easiest generation ever? And when you look back at things, and when history will look over things, yes, there's some positive things that my parents went through regarding financial situations. But when my dad was born in 1952, he didn't own his first house until he was 40. And when I look at my dad's life, my dad, a lot of his friends went to Vietnam War and they died. They had to go through the whole Vietnam War and that fiasco there. And a lot of boomers that people hate on is that they don't realize that they went through terrible stuff, and that's just a part of life. And we've gone through terrible stuff too. There's nothing unique about the human existence. But what I've learned as a human being and as a dad, as a man, that if I can focus in on what I can do to make life better, usually that's the best thing. I think it's really important that we take ownership of our lives and figure out what we want in life. And there's no greater nation than the US of A. And there's so many opportunities here that you can fight and find your way here in the US. It's challenging, it's hard, but it's never been easy. And I don't like the finger pointing towards boomers saying that it is so easy for them to figure things out. I don't like that, because I think it's a defeatist attitude, and I think it's permeating our whole culture that life sucks, everything sucks, I'm so mad at everybody. And that's I think it's a cancer in our society when we have this defeatist attitude. And I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for defending my parents' generation. But when you look at things from a home ownership standpoint, you look at rates in the 1980s, they're close to 20%. They're about certain years they're at 18% interest rate on a 30-year mortgage. But you might say, oh my goodness, they bought houses for $50,000, this or that. I understand, but you have to understand that there's inflation, and there's adjusted inflation. And we're talking about Des Moines, Iowa. I'm not talking about San Francisco. I'm not talking about New York City. I'm talking about Des Moines, Iowa. A lot of times when I hear podcasts, when they are so down on owning a home, they focus on a key ratio. And that ratio is median income compared to median home price. Here in Central Iowa, according to the Des Moines Partnership Group, the median Central Iowa income is right around $100,000. And when you listen to these podcasts, when they say homeownership is not tenable, you cannot do it, life sucks, everybody hates you, you suck, young kid, you can't own a house. When I hear these people, they are either the super wealthy. Secondly, they're talking about their specific market. When you look at their specific market, their ratio between median income and median sales price is usually 10 to 1. We're talking about the big cities like San Francisco, New York City, in certain other parts, many other parts of the nation. And that is true. If you're 10 to 1 right now, yes, home ownership is going to be impossible. And that is really unfortunate. It's really hard. But as an American citizen, if you want the American dream of home ownership, and I know people hate this, but the reality is that you might have to make decisions to live in a community that fits your family, where you can achieve the American dream of home ownership. Des Moines is consistently voted one of the best middle-sized cities in the whole entire nation. Des Moines is fantastic. The cost of living is wonderful. And I can tell you a story about, I had some clients, they bought a house, I think it was in 2012 in San Francisco. And that's when the market was completely down. They bought in 2012, I think they bought for $300,000. The house appreciated to right around $500,000. It was a 1,000 square foot house, no basement, attached garage. So that was incredible opportunity for them in San Francisco. But what they decided was, we don't want to raise our kids here. It's so expensive here that we're going to pick an affordable city to live in. They picked Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa to live in. So they used all the proceeds that they bought a house from 1,000 square foot, and then they turned around with the equity they had, and they bought a house in Johnston that had over 3,000 square feet, and they had enough equity that they bought it for cash. So the point is, their dollar went way further here in central Iowa. Here's the deal. You have to understand that when they bought that house in San Francisco, there's a lot of national pundits who are saying, don't own a house. It's a terrible idea. You know, the next recession is going to come from 2008. But they made a principled decision to own a house in San Francisco that made sense for their family. And then they bought, and then after a few years of owning a house, the house appreciated, the market rebounded, they sold it and had enough equity to buy a house all cash here in Des Moines, a nicer house, triple the size, cost of living way down, and they moved here to central Iowa to achieve the American dream of homeownership. I know this is crazy to think about, but I think it's important to realize that if you want to own a house, and sometimes in these big cities, if you just move about 30 minutes from the heart of the city, there's affordable real estate. I would love to have a loft in Chicago overlooking, Lake Michigan. I would love that. I can't afford it. Just because you want something doesn't mean I'm entitled to it. So I think it's important that you understand that entitlement is poison. And I think that you have to understand that when you think you're entitled to something without working for it, doesn't mean you guarantee you get it. Even like in athletics, I used to play basketball back in the day. Just because I worked really hard in practice and I shot more than everybody, doesn't mean I get any playing time. Doesn't mean we're going to win the game. But all you can do is put the effort in. And when you put the effort into things, it changes you as a person. You value hard work and you go for it. The next thing I think is you have to understand that home ownership and owning a home is not a good investment when you compare it to an index fund. But oftentimes when you own a house, it's a better investment than renting the same type of house. You got to get technical. And so I think that we'll talk more at another time about how I'm not an anti-renter. I think renting does have a purpose. What I'm anti is renting a home aimlessly, not having a plan. I think it's important to have a plan and then using renting as a tool to go from there. Because when you rent or you own, you're paying someone's mortgage. When you rent a house, you're paying the landlord's mortgage. Right now, there's a lot of institutionalized LLCs owning properties. So BlackRock's buying a bunch of properties. So I think right now, when there's so much negative publicity about owning a house, sometimes I'm wondering if it's these huge corporations pushing this agenda so they can sweep in and buy affordable real estate so they can rent that to you. Never forget, the person that owns the house you rent the house from is called the landlord. And I am concerned that people are buying into a serfdom lifestyle where they believe that, I can't own a house, so I'm going to rent from somebody, from a landlord, and create a serfdom society. Home ownership is consistently a much better investment compared to renting the same type of house. And I have countless stories of that. So either you're going to pay your own mortgage or you're going to pay somebody else's. You choose. If you have any questions, please reach out. Love to help you. Whether you're in Central Iowa, I'd love to be a real estate agent. If you're from out of state, if you have any questions, you're looking for a good local real estate agent, I'm a part of several national networks. I'd love to connect you with a good local real estate agent there.